Well, at least he's honest, unlike the company they work for. This one opened with a bit of a recap of everything that's happened in the series so far, which at first did seem frivolous until...
Oh,
come on, Prof. You're exaggerating. I mean, how bad could it be? Oh. Yep, it was finally time for this show to introduce their equivalent of the devil, him. A character so powerful that under the right circumstances, he could have easily mopped the floor with the OG girls, having come close several times and even actually succeeding in an alternate timeline. Up there with Mojo, he was personally one of my favorite antagonists because he was a legit threat to the girls. I know I keep bringing this up, but he once casually pushed the sun away. Of course, another thing I really liked about the character was Tom Kane's performance, where he could switch from playfully sadistic to legitimately terrifying at the drop of a hat. In either case, he would speak with delightfully sociopathic glee, amplified by his very flamboyant personality. So then, who would Japan, or more specifically Toei, get to voice such a role?
一度目が覚めた気がしたけど、二度寝してしまったみたいね。この世界は決して楽しいことばかりではない。愛おしくて愛おしくてしょうがない。だから幸せを与えてやる。相変わらず私をイライラさせるような発言ですね。
Really says something when you also play one of the most intimidating versions of Popco.
お前の寿命もあと30分で尽きる。
However, while the black light had awakened him, as it was suggested that they were originally his powers, some seals on his coffin prevented his escape. Still, he did have enough for him to use his powers to awaken a servant. Let me guess, that thing is gonna possess a little Japanese girl in order to help an insane nationalist fulfill his delusions of grandeur. Still, the mummy couldn't undo the seals, so him sent his servant to find some white light energy to break them. He believed he could find some at a place called the Oedo Western Science Lab, not realizing that obviously the Edo period had long since passed, thus sending the mummy on a wild goose chase. Well, give him credit, he's more effective than bandages. However, while the Oedo lab was no longer around, their descendants at the Utonium lab were. Yep, as we later learned, the Kitazawa clan were originally involved in sealing away him. And I gotta say, I really liked this episode for building a lot of lore for this much more slice-of-life magical girl anime, whilst not spelling everything out for the viewers. Again, I think it really helps the show when they bring in the Doremi writers. In particular, this episode had the head writer Takashi Yamada, aka Midori Kuriyama from that series. And just like that show, we had characters who had an obsession for takoyaki to the point that they actually used their superheroine forms to just go out and buy more. Momoko ended up recommending a very popular stand that attracted a ton of customers, including a certain evil monkey, though surprisingly, he was willing to wait and properly buy his octopus balls. Then again, this is kind of in line with his OG counterpart, and let's face it, 9 times out of 10, it's better to just buy what you want rather than coming up with overly intricate evil plans. Though, unfortunately for Mojo, this was that 1 out of 10 time.
今ので売り切れてしまったんです。
こんなに待ったのにそれはないだもじょ。
Jeez, where's Kamen Rider Chalice when you need him? He can make takoyaki and defeat an evil snakely all at the same time. Thus, Mojo reverted to his old standby and stole from the girls, and when they tried to take it back... You say this monkey made the rowdy rough boys, huh? Of course, they sent him blasting off again, which resulted in one of the takoyaki falling into the mouth of the mummy, ending the first half of the episode. You know, I actually might be more on board with the new Precure season if they just brought in a mummy out of nowhere. Having gotten a taste of the ballast, the mummy went on a takoyaki binger. This resulted in the girls believing that Mojo was its creator, which, you know, doesn't exactly match up with the timeline of events, as the prof even pointed out after they left. Thus, they ended up pulling a bit of a Kid Flash and assaulted the poor monkey for no reason, as he had even properly bought his takoyaki. Though, I would also assume that this might be a reference to telephonies. You know, the episode where the Gangrene Gang pretended to be the mayor and pranked the girls into needlessly attacking their rogues gallery, including him. Though points to these girls for at least trying to apologize to Mojo. However, compensations would have to come later, as it just so happened the mummy had chosen this stand as his next binge. Thus we reached arguably the best part of this episode, as the mummy recognized the white light coming off the girls, and after disposing of Mojo, because this show really likes to abuse the poor monkey, we got one of the few fight scenes in this whole series that could not only compete with a Precure series, but even some of their movies. Now, as always, a lot of credit should go to the animation director Yuji Hakamada, who actually has worked on Precure films, and key animator Yoshikazu Tomita, who's done a lot of great work for this series, including the Girlz' transformations. However, I would say the one who really brought it all together was a particular storyboarder by the name of Daisuke Nishio. The man is a certifiable legend in the industry, having series directed the original Dragon Ball, as well as a good chunk of DBZ, before moving on to directing the first two series of a certain other franchise. So, not too surprisingly, he brought that same veteran energy to this fight. Anyway, after the mummy managed to drain the Girlz' powers, he once again, and quite literally, curb stomped poor Mojo. He also tried to finish off the girls, but fortunately, they had their little mascot there to just give them a little boost. Yeah, this is a bit of a Deus Ex Machina, but I'd argue it's more meant to get across that this mummy, and in turn him, are legitimate threats, whom the girls would need as much support as possible to deal with. Hell, even Mojo managed to lend a bit of a hand. Well, A for effort, here's your Boss Borat trophy. With that, the girls had a brief, but still very impressive Sakuga fest of a fight, as they threw everything they could to defeat the mummy. However, using up so much of their animation budget drained the girls, and thus they were unable to stop the mummy from posthumously completing his mission. The creature's white light-soaked bandages managed to make their way back to him, undoing his seal, and giving us a good look at his anime design, which I do really like, maybe even more than the OG. They of course kept the crab claws and goatee, but also gave him more of an effeminate look with skirt and makeup. It both paid tribute to the original, and also took full advantage of who was voicing him. And most intimidating of all, they made him look like a jester, aka a clown!
Bad touch, stranger danger.
Nah, but seriously, it's probably a reference to the wildcard nature associated with the Fool. This design also had some other influences, but we'll save that for another day. It certainly leagues better than his original design, which, yeah, I think they just reused that for Michelle, which would explain why his monster form had some him vibes to it. But yeah, this guy was going to bring about chaos just as soon as spring came. Yeah, unfortunately, he wasn't going to immediately act on his newfound freedom, but the episode did end with him releasing something ominous that would drastically affect the rest of the series. This was the episode that you could really tell they pulled all the stops for, deservedly so for a character like this. They got just about everything right for this villain debut, from the animation, the build-up, and of course the S-tier VA they got to play such an iconic baddie. Granted, I could have gone without some of the Mojo abuse in this one, but at least even that had a purpose. While OG him certainly worked as a regular recurring villain, I always wondered why he didn't stand up more against the girls' rogues gallery. Again, he was basically Satan. He could bend reality, and given enough hatred and despair, could bring upon the apocalypse. Hell, Craig even confirmed that he was canonically the girls' strongest villain, and yet he wasn't really treated like a big bad for that series. Thus, I really like the idea of turning him into it for this show by essentially being responsible for everything that happens. And like most villains in the show, it really helps that for the most part they made their own character while still paying tribute to the original, because let's face it, I don't think anyone's gonna top Tom Kane's performance. Granted, they kind of created a Frieza clone, but I think that just happens whenever you get Ryusui Knockout to play a villain. Still, yeah, for a villain like that, you do need some good build-up to get across the threat they posed, which this episode managed to do while sticking with its usually more light-hearted tone. Not only was the mummy pretty hilarious thanks to its deadpan deliveries, but he also put up a really good fight against the girls. This was Daisuke Nishio's only contribution to this series, and the DBZ legend made it count, as this was easily one of the best animated episodes of the series. My only real negative with this episode was that they went a little too far with the Mojo abuse. Not only did I start to feel bad for the monkey, but the joke did get a little tired. it was somewhat made up by the fact that he did at least get his moment to shine, if at all fleeting. Still, overall, with some good building towards one of my favorite villains of the original, this episode was really well done. Don't expect this version of the devil to get a golden form because frankly, he doesn't need it to look good. With this done, I'm gonna go work on the third and final part of the Symphogear XV review. Again, not sure when it'll come out. I mean, it is also the holidays, so I do kind of want to take at least a few days off from everything. But still, I'll try to get it out before at least 2022, before we start a whole new year of content. Look forward to it, and until then though, farewell for now my friends, and excuse me. Hello? Yeah, I think you can find that about a few thousand kilometers that way. Well, just let that be the West Coast problem.